I've attended countless graduation ceremonies over my 30 years as a high school teacher, but watching my son James receive his medical degree felt different. Pride swelled in my chest as he walked across the stage, and I thought about how far he'd come from the little boy who used to bandage his stuffed animals. My daughter-in-law Catherine sat beside me, her 7-month pregnant belly prominent under her designer dress. She was scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up as James accepted his diploma. I tried to ignore the sting of her disinterest, something I'd grown accustomed to over the past 2 years of their marriage. "Isn't this wonderful?" I whispered, touching her arm gently. She looked up briefly, offered a tight smile, and returned to her phone. Just confirming the catering for the party. The party. Catherine had insisted on hosting a lavish graduation celebration at their new house, overruling James's preference for a simple family dinner. "We need to make connections for his career," she'd argued. My son, ever the peacemaker, had agreed. I should have known something was wrong when Catherine positioned the bar next to the gift table. She'd been unusually interested in the seating arrangements, ensuring all of James' potential colleagues from the hospital were placed where they could see the main table clearly. The evening started pleasantly enough, their home filled with guests, medical professionals, former classmates, family friends. James beamed as he introduced his mentors to me, proudly telling them about my teaching career. Catherine hovered nearby, champagne glass in hand, steering conversations toward James's promising future in pediatric surgery. "Everyone, if I could have your attention." Catherine's voice cut through the party chatter. She stood at the main table, clinking her glass. My son looked up, confusion crossing his face. This wasn't the time we planned for speeches. "First, thank you all for celebrating James' achievement today." She smiled brilliantly at the crowd. "As many of you know, we're also expecting our first child in 2 months. A new chapter of our lives is beginning." The guests murmured appreciatively. I noticed Catherine's eyes fix on me with an unsettling gleam. "Speaking of new chapters," she continued, "I think it's time we address some family matters. You see, my dear mother-in-law here," she gestured toward me, "has been very interested in our baby's future, almost obsessively so." The room grew quiet. James started to stand, but Catherine placed a hand on his shoulder, keeping him seated. So I thought, why not make it interesting? "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm opening bids for my mother-in-law's role in our child's life." She raised her glass higher. "Starting price, just $10,000. Any takers?" A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the crowd. James's face reddened. "Catherine, what are you doing?" "Oh, come on, darling. Your mother's always talking about how priceless grandchildren are. Let's see how much she's willing to pay for the privilege." I sat frozen, my hands gripping my purse where I kept the envelope for months, waiting for the right moment. I'd hoped it wouldn't come to this. "Think about it," Catherine continued, her voice taking on a cruel edge. "For the right price, you get to be called grandma, attend birthday parties, maybe even babysit occasionally. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" "Catherine, stop this now," James demanded, standing despite her attempts to keep him seated. But she wasn't finished. "Of course, if the price isn't right, well, there are plenty of other potential grandmothers out there. Ones who understand boundaries. Ones who don't try to force their way into every decision about the baby." My hands trembled as I opened my purse. The envelope was worn from months of indecision, of wondering if I should reveal what I'd discovered. "I have a better idea," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why don't we talk about what real family means, Catherine? Or should I say, Sarah Mitchell?" The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. For the first time since I'd known her, Catherine's perfectly composed mask cracked. "What did you say?" she whispered. "You see," I stood, addressing the now completely silent room. "While Catherine's been so concerned about my role in her baby's life, she's been hiding something rather significant about her own." "Mom, what are you talking about?" James looked between us, confusion and concern warring on his face. I opened the envelope slowly, the papers inside heavy with the weight of truth. "I have your adoption records from Street Mary's Home for Children in Portland. They tell quite a story about a little girl named Sarah Mitchell, adopted at age 6 by the Prestons of Seattle. A girl who grew up to change her name to Catherine Preston at 18. Catherine's face had gone white. "How did you find out?" I finished for her. "I'm a teacher, Catherine. I know how to research, but more importantly, I know what it's like to desperately want to belong to a family. to fear being rejected if people know your past. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in abandoned drinks. James had moved to Catherine's side, his hand on her arm, his expression a mixture of shock and concern. "Why are you doing this?" Catherine's voice cracked, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. I looked at my son, seeing the hurt and confusion in his eyes, then back at the woman who tried to auction off my relationship with my grandchild. "Because family isn't something you can buy or sell, Catherine. It's not about blood or birth certificates or even names. It's about love, acceptance, and truth." I pulled out one more document from the envelope. "And if you'd ever bothered to really talk to me, to share your fears instead of trying to push me away, you would have known something important." I held up the paper, my own adoption records from 1962. "Mom?" James's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, son. I was adopted too. And the day I found out about Catherine's past, I thought, finally I could connect with my daughter-in-law. Help her understand that being adopted doesn't make you any less worthy of love or family." Catherine swayed slightly, her hand protectively covering her pregnant belly. The party guests stood frozen, watching our family drama unfold like a slow-motion car crash. But this was only the beginning. As I looked at Catherine's shattered expression, I knew the real storm was yet to come. There was more in that envelope, much more, that would shake our family's foundation to its core. The silence in the room was deafening. Catherine's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the trembling of her lower lip, while James stood between us, looking like a man trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. "There's more," I said softly, pulling out another document from the envelope. "When I discovered Catherine's adoption records, I also found something else. Something that explains her intense reaction to my involvement in the baby's life." Catherine's hands gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. "Don't," she whispered. "5 years ago," I continued, "there was another baby, wasn't there, Catherine?" James's head snapped toward his wife. "What?" "A little boy," I said, laying down a birth certificate, "born at Sacred Heart Hospital in Phoenix. Given up for adoption 3 days later." The glass someone dropped in the background barely registered as Catherine's legs gave out. James caught her, helping her into a chair. The party guests began quietly excusing themselves, sensing this was no longer a celebration but a family crisis. "Catherine," James's voice was gentle but insistent, "is this true?" She nodded, tears finally breaking through her perfect facade. "I was 22, she whispered, "still in college. The father was, it doesn't matter. I couldn't keep him, I couldn't be a mother then." "But you could have told me," James said, pain evident in his voice. "How?" She laughed bitterly. "When we met, you were this perfect man from this perfect family. How could I tell you I was not only adopted but had given up my own child? That I was damaged goods?" I moved closer, pulling out another document. "That's not why you've been trying to push me away, though, is it, Catherine?" Her head shot up, eyes wide with panic. "Please, don't." "The real reason," I continued, my heart heavy, "is because 6 months ago, that little boy's adoptive parents reached out to you. They want an open adoption. They want him to know his biological mother and his biological siblings." James sank into a chair beside Catherine. The remaining guests took this as their final cue to leave, quietly filing out until only our family remained in the aftermath of this explosion of secrets. "You're pregnant now," I said softly, "and suddenly there's this other child out there, a child who might want to know his brother or sister, a child who represents everything you've tried to forget. So you tried to control what you could, including my role in this new baby's life." Catherine buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. James reached for her, but she flinched away. "I can't," she sobbed. "I can't have him know. I can't have anyone know. Do you understand what this would do to my reputation, to James's career?" "Having an adopted child doesn't damage anyone's reputation," I said firmly. "Neither does making a difficult choice when you were young. But trying to auction off family relationships, that might." James finally found his voice. "Why did you trust me with this, Catherine? Did you think I would love you less?" She looked up at him, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Everyone leaves," she whispered. "My birth parents left. My adopted parents died when I was 19. I gave away my baby. When I met you, I thought if I could just be perfect enough, create the perfect life, perfect family. But family isn't about perfection, I interrupted gently. It's about acceptance, about standing together through the hard times. I pulled out one final document from my envelope, which is why I want to show you this. Catherine stared at the paper, confusion replacing fear on her face. What is this? These are my adoption records, I explained. Not just the certificate, but the full file, including information about my birth mother. I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Her name was Margaret Mitchell. The color drained from Catherine's face. Mitchell? But that's your birth mother's surname, yes. I did more digging, Catherine. Margaret Mitchell had 2 daughters, one in 1962, me, and another in 1979. Your birth mother. We're not just family by marriage. I'm your biological aunt. The sound that escaped Catherine was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. James stared between us, trying to process this new revelation. All this time, Catherine whispered, all this time I've been pushing away the only real family I had left. Not the only family, I corrected her. You have James, you have your baby on the way. And somewhere in Phoenix, there's a little boy who might want to know his remarkable mother someday. Catherine's hands went to her pregnant belly, protective and trembling. I was so scared, she admitted. When those adoptive parents reached out, all I could think was that everyone would know, that I'd lose everything I built, my perfect life would shatter. Perfect isn't real, James said, finally taking her hand. But this is real. All of it. The messy parts, the complicated parts, the parts that scare us. That's what family is. I reached across the table, laying my hand over theirs. So what do you say we stop trying to auction off family members and start building something genuine? Something that has room for all our truths. Catherine looked at her husband, then at me, years of carefully constructed walls crumbling in her eyes. I don't know how, she admitted. We'll figure it out together, I promised. Starting with cleaning up this party mess, ordering some pizza, and having a real conversation. No bids required. A ghost of a smile touched Catherine's lips. I like that. As James went to find paper towels for the spilled champagne, I saw Catherine's hand drift to her phone, hovering over a contact labeled Phoenix Family. She caught me watching and quickly put the phone away. One step at a time, I said gently. She nodded, then surprised me by standing and wrapping her arms around me in an awkward, belly-hindered hug. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. I know, I replied, holding her close. And Catherine? That little boy? When you're ready to talk about him, I'm here. After all, he's my family too. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. How did you become so wise about all this? I smiled, thinking of my own journey from adopted child to mother to teacher to grandmother to be. Let's just say I've had some practice with complicated family stories. As we began cleaning up the remnants of the failed party, I watched Catherine and James moving around each other, tentatively rebuilding their trust. The envelope of secrets lay empty on the table, its contents now in the open where they belonged. But I knew this wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where secrets gave way to truth, where perfect facades crumbled to reveal something much more valuable. Real family in all its messy, complicated glory. 2 months later, I sat in the hospital waiting room, a small blue gift bag on my lap. Inside was a photo album, empty except for the first page, which held 2 pictures, my adoption papers and Catherine's. A new beginning for our family story. James paced the corridor while doctors attended to Catherine in the delivery room. The past 2 months had been a journey of healing and uncomfortable truths. Catherine had started therapy, working through her fears about motherhood and abandonment. She'd even taken the first tentative steps in corresponding with her son's adoptive family in Phoenix, exchanging emails and photos. Mom,